Welcome.
Thank you.
What is your vision for transforming education and unlocking opportunities for all young people and children around the world?
Thank you so much. That's a great question. I think essentially education is so fundamental to all of our development work. From BRAC, which works around eradication of poverty and is ensuring that every single individual can realize their own potential, education is the most foundational part of all of that. So my vision is obviously ensuring that regardless of what their circumstances are, whether they are living in remote area, whether they have some form of disability, whether they have extreme poverty, those are all external conditions. That doesn't define human beings. But how you can sort of unlock the potential is by providing not only basic access to education, but basic access to quality and relevant education for the changing times of our country, of the world right now. So it's very, very important.
Thanks for that response. What is the one solution that you can see creating meaningful transformation in education?
I think one important bit is for us, and what we really believe is that education has to be joyful, right? So whether it's early childhood development, where we have introduced play-based model, we call them play labs, or in our non-formal schools, play, joyfulness, creativity is a very, very essential part. And more in this sort of a very sort of noisy and unpredictable world going forward, I think it's more important that you have internal resilience and you have the capacity and the creativity to fight or to deal with unpredictable situations. So for that, I think this creativity is very important. So I think those are the tools. I think how you kind of build up future citizens of the country by instilling values and creativity and analytical ability. If you can ensure that is given through education, that I see is something that can be completely transformational.
And next year is the SDG Summit. That's the halfway mark of the 2030 agenda. How can we engage young people as designers of their future to achieve all the 17 goals?
It's a big question. I mean, I think, with next year, after next year, we have only 7 years left before the SDG 2030 kicks in. We don't have enough time. We lost almost 3 years because of COVID. So there's so much to do, and so many different kinds of crises coming in. And again, I think it's very important that young people really start to take charge. We are seeing that starting to happen around climate change advocacy work. It needs to happen in other areas as well. We need to kind of create social movement around social issues. We have seen that happening in Bangladesh around road safety. School children came out and basically said, you need to do something about it. I think this is more and more of this needs to happen, whether it's in ensuring equity, ensuring good quality education. I think that's first thing, that you need to establish that it's your right to make a change to what's going on, right? So young people need to be aware and be engaged with the society and with the changes that are happening in society and demand their rights. And the second thing I say is that everybody can be change makers, right? So don't just complain about what's happening around. Be the change that you want to see. That is very, very important. And I think, when we did our survey in Bangladesh, everybody wants to do that. Everybody wants to be part of something bigger than themselves. So can we support them by providing a platform, or can they create their own platform to even make a small change in the society around them? It may be starting with solving a simple problem around your neighborhood, but then do something which is different. And we can talk about SDGs and all of that, but even education-wise. But if you solve the problem within your own community by providing education to the person who needs it the most or who are not being able to get it, and being a young person, you have done your bit in contributing to the SDG. So don't just wait for the government or other actors to come get their act together. Be the change that you want to see.
Take responsibility and initiative.
Absolutely.
The UN Foundation is celebrating its 25th anniversary next year. Where were you 25 years ago in 1998? And what do you hope for the future generations 25 years from now?
Well, that's a great question. I mean, 98, I was very much just graduated out of university. In my first year of my job, I got a job and had the whole world in front of me. I was in New York, actually. I was in New York City, and then, yeah, I mean, I was kind of building up my dream until I decided that I wanted to move back to my country, which happened after 12 years after that. But essentially, I think in 25 years, I think world will be a very different place. I think, 25 years ago, if I look back, world was so much simpler, and then, but I think world is getting more complicated. So we have to be ready for uncertainty, unpredictability, and we have to be internally very strong and resilient to fight whatever it comes. And COVID gave us a very good lessons in terms of what can happen. But I think for young people, it's so important that to really understand that one of the biggest lessons of COVID, that you can't be safe until everybody is safe, right? So the thing is, within our society is the same thing. So you can be prosperous, you can live a very good life, but if people around you are not doing well, then the society is not going to be doing well. So you're not going to be in harmony. So it's so important that we give back, we do our bit, particularly those who are privileged, to ensure that there is social harmony in place. So I think we have to young people have to lead going forward, absolutely. I mean, I don't know whether I was able to do what was expected of me as a human being, but I had big dreams 25 years later, and I think I still can contribute a lot, but for us who are kind of moving and making space for younger generation, I think it's important that whatever platform that we have worked on over the last few years, we ensure that the platform is firm and we create and give space to new leaders who are leaders of the future.
I agree with you. If you had one goal or wish you'd like to see come true to protect people and the planet, what would it be?
I think my wish is really, there are two things. One is that I think we really, I think it's essential that everybody is seeing that the fire has started, right? What can happen because of climate change is not theoretical anymore. We are seeing that. So, policymakers really need to get their act together and lead by ensuring that, the mitigation work in terms of protecting our environment happens. The emission comes down below 1.5 degrees and we kind of move away from fossil fuel. That's number one for me, that, we need to ensure that the planet is safe by ensuring that we don't hurt the planet anymore, right? By burning coal fires, fossil fuels, and all these other things. And the second thing is, speaking of fire burning, this fire has already started and it affects people in different ways. If you are living in USA, when you have a big storm or extreme weather coming in, you get a lot of support from your government. When you're living in Bangladesh, when you have cyclones sweeping your life savings away, it's much more difficult to get any support. So just like COVID, it's like, you may be affected by the same thing, but what happens to you afterwards is very different based on where you live. So it's so much important also for me to ensure that the world is aware that a lot of people are hurting right now as we speak because of climate change, lack of changing of livelihood, lack of water, extreme heat. It's all happening right now. People just are not as aware and sensitive about it as they should be. So that is my second thing, that we need to help people adopt who are already suffering to ensure that their livelihoods are not suffering.
Our common agenda calls for a new deal for a new generation, covering education, jobs, and the climate. How can the global community work together to achieve humanity's greatest goals and aspirations for now and the future?
I mean, that's the million-dollar question all the time. I mean, it's essentially, I think, we need that one rallying cry where everybody will agree upon, right? And I think the biggest rallying cry right now is to protect our environment and climate, right? So I think if this brings everybody together, and we can, this is an example of where we can all really collectively work together, regardless of wherever we are, whoever we are, whether you're the policymaker, whether you're a young person in a remote part of Bangladesh, it doesn't really matter. But then we all have a way to contribute. So I think that's something very important. But also for global leaders, I think, who are in different sectors, whether you're in government, whether in private sector, whether you're in social sector, this is the time to lead, right? So I think this is the rallying cry that all of us will need to get our collective heads together and figure out how together we can make a difference. Absolutely.
This is the time. You often speak of the power of storytelling, and I am a big advocate for that. How do you think we could leverage storytelling as a tool to drive action in the lead up to the SDG Summit and beyond?
Absolutely. I think, whether it's SDG, whether it's development policy, I think these are all, I think we overcomplicate these things, right? So I think the best way to make it simple and easy for people to connect to this is by storytelling. What does extreme poverty mean for Rosina in Rangpur, in a northern part of Bangladesh? Or what does sort of gender equality means for somebody in Uganda or Tanzania? So, coming up with human stories of not only just sufferings, but at the same time stories of courage, how people are fighting against all odds. I think that's so inspirational and powerful when you actually tell them. And there are stories everywhere. You go everywhere, you just have to be curious to find out. You have to ask that question, what's your story? But there are stories. So I think it's very important that we hear stories from people who often do not get to tell their stories to the audience. Now with social media, it's easier. For organizations like UN Foundation or BRAC or others, we can ensure that their story gets told without mediums like you and I. They can directly be able to tell their stories, and I think this is more possible than ever before, right? So because of social media.
True.
Absolutely. And I think the more we do that, more people will connect with why they should do their own bit. But I think unless something moves here, people do not act. So you may think that you want to act, but people may just say that I'm liking a video and that's all I should do. But that's not enough. You actually want to make a difference. You want to do beyond what you can do in social media, right? So that means action. That means change in your own local community. So for that to happen, your heart needs to be pulled, and storytelling is the best way to do that.
Always make sure you have a call to action. Thank you so much, Asif, for coming today.